Another episode of Equity Mates on AusBiz. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you going?
I'm very good, Bryce. Great to be back for another Tuesday. We've got another expert, and we're covering a part of the market that is fascinating.
It is.
Can't quite say it's within my circle of competence.
No.
But God, I love trying to get in there, trying to get it into my circle of competence.
That's it. We've spoken about on the show before, and it's certainly an industry that is growing and has some companies with some incredible names that we'll get to in a second. But we're here to talk about cybersecurity, and we're joined by an expert to help us all through it. It's our pleasure to welcome Gareth Brown to Equity Mates. Gareth, welcome.
Hi, gentlemen. Hi, everyone.
So Gareth is a portfolio manager from Forager Fund's international shares team, and we're going to be unpacking why investors are turning to cybersecurity stocks. So Gareth, as we sort of mentioned there, cybersecurity not within our circle of competence, but a growing industry. A lot of retail investors can find it a bit confusing and complex. So let's start at the top. How do you make sense of the cybersecurity industry? How would you sort of break it down for us?
Well, maybe let's talk about what cybersecurity is first, if that's helpful. Something of a buzzword. We all know the term IT security. That's sort of the old word for it. That conjures up images of hardware, software, all stored on site right in front of you and securing that. That idea is a bit redundant. We have information flowing all around the world now. Sometimes it's on our desktop, sometimes it's at head office servers, sometimes it's sitting on third-party servers in the cloud. Cybersecurity is really a more all-encompassing word for the safety and security of that data as it moves around the place. This is a huge industry globally. I think in 2021, it's expected to be $220 million $1 billion of spending, and that's growing at sort of 8 to 10% annually for the foreseeable future. That's a really, really big growth rate for such a large industry. In Australia, we spend about $6 billion annually on cybersecurity. That's a huge number again, about $250 per head. So it's a very big industry.
A fascinating industry, Gareth, and the more you look at it, the more it just seems like there's so much going on in this space. You know, most major companies have had some form of cybersecurity breach or data hack or something like that. There's some data that we've got here that one cybercrime is reported every 8 minutes in Australia. So just the scale of what is going on here is pretty mind-blowing. How should we conceptualize the industry? What are some of the major, areas or company types? I assume there's software plays, hardware plays, different sort of ways to, make the cyberspace more secure. How should we as investors conceptualize it?
I think generally you just look at the tailwinds first, maybe then break it down into the industry. So just big trends of computerization and digitization going back 50 years or more. The cloud, people know what that is nowadays. I don't think I need to explain it. Hugely important that data is migrating to and from the cloud. It's a new sensitivity point, which adds complexity and risk, and just a massive proliferation of IT devices. So, I used to, when I was working at the bank back in the 90s, I'd walk into my office, I'd have a desktop computer. Now, when I'm at work, I have computers at work, I have computers at home, I have a mobile phone, tablets. I'm accessing it from various points. So lots of new vulnerabilities there. And then I think when you try and break the industry down, that's the right way to think about it. There's lots of interesting little niches, and I think we're going to talk about Blanco in a moment, which is one niche. There is sort of the cutting edge of it as well. So you look at something like a Darktrace in the UK, recently listed stock. They're providing enterprise defense against the really unpredictable, really novel, sophisticated cybersecurity threats. And it's that whole part of the industry's moved well beyond, simple phishing scams that steal money from your grandmother. It's how does it do stuff like that? The answer is AI, machine learning. So it's not so much a team of experts now trying to conceptualize where threats will come from and defending against it. It is computers looking for patterns, what doesn't fit here. And I think that's really unavoidable. That's more and more where security spending is going, is having AI-based solutions to the threats.
So Gareth, you mentioned there Blanco. It's a pretty good segue to speak about it. We don't often talk about individual stocks. There's a couple of ETFs that are available to the community. Hack is one that comes to mind, but it's always great understanding some of the big companies that play in the cybersecurity space. So Blanco, if you're able to start at the top for us and perhaps explain what the company does and why it excites you, and then we can go from there.
Definitely not at the big end of town, Blanco. It is a smaller niche player, but the main business here is data erasure. You own a piece of IT hardware. It comes to the end of its useful life, or it's about to transition to a new owner. Then you'll want to clear that hard drive of everything sensitive for obvious security reasons. So the options available are that you can destroy or shred that hard drive. Now that makes reuse impossible. It makes recycling extremely difficult, and it's becoming increasingly unacceptable in an environmentally conscious world. You can also overwrite the hard disk multiple times for better security. But that is more akin to, I guess, scrambling an egg rather than actually clearing a hard drive. And hackers are getting increasingly good at unscrambling eggs. Lastly, you can use a piece of software that systematically goes through and changes every single bit on that hard drive. You can get free software to do that, and it's pretty good at doing the job. But at that upper end, you're actually interested in two things. You are interested in clearing the data effectively, but you also want an audit trail. You want to be able to show your customers, your bosses, your suppliers, your regulators that you've done the job properly. And that's really where Blanco comes in. They give you that audit trail that says this hard drive has been cleared. It is now safe to sell or to recycle. And it's accredited by dozens of regulatory bodies around the world. And in that small niche of paid erasure software, these guys have a roughly 90% market share globally.
Fascinating one, Gareth. Can't say that I've had to clear too many hard drives in my time, but from what I can see across the room at Bryce, I think he's had some experience in that world. But it's an interesting one. I imagine the competitive landscape across the cybersecurity industry is just moving incredibly quickly. For Blanco, you mentioned that there's a number of free software options that may not do exactly the same thing, but are playing in a similar space. And I'm sure there are other paid options as well. How do you think about the competitive set that Blanco finds itself in, and why do you think they're the best option?
I think the solution is simple, and you're right. That free, when I first became involved in this company, I did worry about that free solution, but that accreditation piece is just massively important. Their customers are generally big enterprises or IT asset disposal firms that their job is to recycle and resell hardware. Those guys need to be able to prove they've done the job, and a piece of software that downloaded from the internet is not going to cut it.
So Gareth, just thinking about cybersecurity more broadly, what are some countries, which countries are leading the way in this space at the moment? Like we know, for example, audio, Sweden is the home of audio with some amazing audio companies. And I'm just curious, are there particular countries where you're focusing research and taking positions in your portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, it's the normal sweep of technology countries. I think you'll find it. Orange County seems to be a bit of a hotspot around Irvine. So rather than, and then Silicon Valley, of course, we see quite a few solutions coming out of the UK, Europe, Israel. So just the usual high-tech nations. It's not something that there's too many local solutions for, and it's not something that we can probably claim any competitive advantage in making here in Australia.
Out of time, but I opened the episode talking about how cyber is not in my circle of competence. As much as I would love it to be, as much as I would really like to understand this part of the market more, as soon as you start scratching the surface, getting under the hood and getting into the technical details, I very quickly get lost. But for retail investors out there who are trying to get up to speed and keep up with this industry, are seeing some of the numbers that you're talking about how quickly the industry is growing and saying, I want to understand this better and I want to be a part of this. Do you have any resources or any websites or any podcasts or anything that has really helped you get up to speed on this industry that retail investors could pick up and give a read or give a watch or give a listen to?
I think the gold standard is really the Gartner research, which is mostly paid and it's a little bit hard for people to access. There are a lot of podcasts that have been quite interesting. Patrick O'Shaughnessy from Invest Like the Best has done a few with the people at this, I can't remember names at the moment, sorry, but people in this sort of area. As value investors, we are coming at this not just we're trying to buy things at 10 times revenue because there's a nice tailwind. We're looking for deeply misunderstood stocks, which Blanco was at the time we purchased. I think there's a highly complex area, and you buy the big things or you buy the things that you can understand better than the rest of the market.
Invest Like the Best is certainly a great resource, so I'm glad you mentioned that one there, Gareth. But we have run out of time, so thank you very much for joining us on AusBiz this afternoon. Certainly an industry that has plenty of tailwinds and is a lot of interest to the Equity Mates and AusBiz community. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And that brings us to the end of Equity Mates for today. If you're interested in more about what we're doing, head to equitymates.com. But otherwise, we'll be back tomorrow with a Watchlist Wednesday.
Yeah, and Bryce will go tonight, get Blanco software and wipe some more hard drives.